Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. All right, the other week I posted a reel, a meme, what have you, that was about the fact that, we're not so much afraid of the future as we are afraid of repeating the past. And that post really took off because I think it resonated with a lot of us, right? I mean, yes, sure, we are nervous to walk in the ring, a lot of us, maybe we're just excited, or maybe we're excited and nervous. And we've talked a little bit about how those can overlap and sort of fool us into thinking that we're more nervous than we actually are, because again, in our bodies, nerves and excitement translate to be a lot of the same physical reactions or responses, right? We can have a nervous stomach, or we can get a headache, or we get foggy, we might forget the course, there's all these different physiological things that happen when we get nervous, and a lot of them are the same exactly as when we get excited. And so sometimes we are about to run, or we're even thinking about running. Maybe it's Wednesday and we're thinking about the weekend and we're thinking about competing, and we start to feel those feelings, and we could be excited, but we mistake them for nerves. So that is, of course, one aspect. But the reason I think that this meme or this reel really touched so many nerves is that we have a history. Right? This isn't the very first time we've ever picked up a leash. This isn't the very first day we've ever run in a trial for most of us. And so I think that what happens is with a history comes, some amount of experience, good experiences, bad experiences, in between, we have experiences. And what happens is that we are wired to remember and respond, and I'm going to use the word weight, right? We give more weight to those experiences that are negative. And it's not our fault. It's just, anthropologically how we developed, right? That if we were alert to all the possible dangers, that we could keep ourselves safe, right? If we remembered the bad things, right? Remember, fire hot, don't touch, right? That protected us in the future. So it was more important for us to remember fire hot than it was to remember that, it's safe to sit on that log wrapped around the fire. I don't know why I'm picturing my caveman with s'mores, but there we are. So we learn by remembering our experiences, and in our deep ancestral case, we really needed to weight dangerous or negative experiences more than positive ones. And it kept us alive, right? It kept us alive. And so we get it, but sometimes it really works against us, especially in competition, especially in sport, especially when we're sitting here trying to work on our mindset and we're trying so hard to be positive. And yet one of the things we are fearing when we walk into the ring is that thing, that one event, that one time, or maybe that 5 times that it happened, whatever we're afraid of, happened in the past, and we're afraid of that happening again in the future. And logically, sometimes when I'm coaching people, I will get in a little bit of a circle with this, right? And my clients, my handlers almost defend their fears, right? And what that looks like is something like, okay, so, this is me talking. So I'll say something like, so why do you think that, or why do you think you get nervous when you walk into the standard ring? And the person will be like, well, because these last 6 times, my dog has jumped off the A-frame. Okay. And I'll say, yes, but you're also telling me that 20 times your dog did a perfect A-frame. And they'll be like, yeah, but these 6 times they jumped off the A-frame. And so what I mean by we get into this circular or like defensive conversation, not defensive, but like they're defending, because what they're doing is they're pulling out the receipts, right? They're pulling out the receipts and they're like, no, let me show you the days, the times, the places where my dog jumped off the A-frame. And I will then kind of try to counter with, yes, but if we were putting it all on a spreadsheet, from a data perspective, your dog has recently done, 20 great A-frames and 6 bad ones. So statistically speaking, your chances are better that they're going to do a good A-frame. And we get right back into it. Yes, but these 6 times, okay? And I'm laughing because I've done it too, right? I've done it. The story of Moxie and her weave poles. You think I haven't defended my problems before? Of course. We all defend our problems. And when we defend our problems like that, guess what? We get to keep them. We get to keep our problems. We get to keep making the same mistakes. We keep doing the same things, repeating the same patterns, because it's what we're focused on. It's what we believe will happen. And it's where our attention is. And where our attention is where our focus goes. And where our focus goes, our actions follow. And where our actions follow, so do our results. I mean, we know, right? It's a slippery slope. So the trick is we have to turn it around, right? We can't keep walking into the ring being so afraid of our past, or that the things that happened to us in the past will show up again. This also doesn't just happen in the ring. It happens outside the ring. Those of us who've had dogs who've been a little bit or a lot of it, a little bit reactive in stressful situations. Like the example I always tell is my first burner, my novice A burner, was just, I mean, it's not nice to say, but I think he kind of had a little man's disease kind of thing going on. And so he always was kind of just a jerk in like crowds, in like tight spaces and environments. And he was kind of that, like, he would just be a jerk. And so, I mean, I love him to death, but that was not his strong suit. And what I learned is when I was going into a crowd with him, what worked was I would, because he's tall enough, I would just slip my hand in his collar, right? So I had maximum control. And there would be a treat in my other hand that I would, of course, shove immediately into his nose and mouth area. Okay. And that's how we would walk through a crowd. All right. Well, fast forward. I have had 4 other burners since who don't have that behavior, who aren't bad in crowds, who are just fine. And guess what I do? I put my hand in the collar and I put my food in front of their face and I manipulate them basically through a crowd. Now, we could argue it's fine. Is any harm going to come to that? Like, no, that's probably a nice, safe thing to do. We've all had to walk our dogs through crowds where that might be a good habit. And I think that's probably why I've kept it. But in truth, that happened and I kept it because I didn't want the past to repeat itself, even though it was a past dog, even though the dog I had after him could not have been more opposite him in terms of her energy and how she dealt with the world, right? Didn't matter. I didn't want the past to repeat. So there are all kinds of little and big ways that we treat our dogs or we prepare for situations, not even just trials, could be situations, right? Taking your dog out in public for some reason, right? That you prepare for that and you think, oh my God, 3 dogs ago, I don't want that to happen again. And so we carry that with us. And again, when we carry that with us, we carry it forward and we take those assumptions or we take those beliefs, right? Those thoughts and beliefs, which become actions, which become results, and we keep replaying them. So in a lot of ways, we keep bringing the past back up, right? It's like that person who will never forget, the thing that happened 3 years ago and they bring it up in every argument or every discussion, right? And then you're just like, let it go already, Susan, it's been 20 years, or whatever. And not to pick on any Susans out there, but we know those people, right? And in those kinds of conversations, it's real easy to see because we're over it, but it still has left a mark on that person. And I think we are the exact same way with our dogs. And certainly with things that became a pattern or things that were hard and that we had to work through, right? If you had a reactive dog, you've had to work through that. You've got a lot of coping strategies. If you had a dog that kept missing their, dog walk, and you had to take a year off to retrain it, that trigger is still like right there under the surface, in the obedience ring. If you had a dog who just hated all, people with clipboards or something because something bad happened. Like we carry that. We like bring it in, put it in it's like we laminate it before we even put it in our bags, right? Like we make sure that that memory is protected and we are going to defend that experience for the long haul. And I know that I can't take that away, right? I can't take the history away from you or any of my clients. So what we can do instead is we need to give more weight, or at least equal, or maybe even 3/4 of the weight to the positive things that we do the negative things, right? So if you are weighting some negative thing that happened as a 10, you at least got to weight the positive thing a 7.5. Right? You got to give me that. You got to at least try to give value to the positive things, because like most habits, right? We don't really stop doing something as much as we replace it with another thing, right? I mean, yeah, if you want to stop smoking, most people replace it with gum or something that helps, right? That helps them get over that hurdle, all right? And I obviously was not a smoker, so I'm probably giving you a bad example. But the best way to break a habit you don't want is to replace it with a positive habit. So you squeeze it out. You squeeze out that old thing. So before you know it, that old thing doesn't have any room to breathe, right? You aren't giving it the time of day, right? For me, I love sugary snacks. I could eat sugary snacks 24/7. Like a 12-year-old, right? I would be perfectly happy to do that. So in order to squeeze that out, I try to replace that with blueberries and grapes and other sweet but not deadly, snacks, okay? Again, not a great example, but you get the picture. So what we want to do with our dog life is we also want to squeeze out some of those old memories and allow for new memories. We need to allow for those good experiences to matter. Because when every time you defend the past or you are afraid of the past, you're dredging it up again. You're bringing it back to the forefront. You're not letting go. And in some cases, some handlers that I've worked with, they're not forgiving themselves for the mistake, which is a really big deal, really big emotionally, and can bring up a lot of emotional triggers and just is really hard to get through. So let's talk about how we start to use good things that happen to push out some of those negative, or just turn down the weight of some of those negative experiences so that we can walk into the ring and prepare to walk into the ring with a much more positive, confident outlook. Quick question. Do you ever wish you had more mindset help? Well, the Q membership was created just for that reason. Every month we pick a topic and then we have 4 lessons, which are kind of like these podcasts, that we dive deeper into. And so if you are ready for more, you're ready for more mindset work, think about joining the Q membership. Annual members get a free coaching session, but you can also choose the monthly option as well. Go to theqcoach.com to learn more. Let's get back to the episode. All right, so let's try to turn the tables, okay? So let's imagine we are keeping a spreadsheet, because kind of mentally we are. We are keeping a spreadsheet of all the things that happen with our dogs in the ring, all right? And let's just imagine one sport. And if you need to narrow that down further, imagine one class. Okay, so for my agility folks out there, maybe you're just imagining standard. Or for my obedience folks out there, maybe you're just narrowing it down to novice obedience or healing, or, a specific exercise or something in rally. Okay, get it somewhere that you can work through this example. Woof, that's the word I was looking for. Okay, so if we got our spreadsheet and we're putting down all the things that have ever happened, And what starts to happen is we form trends, right? Or things start to stick out. You know, maybe in agility, the times that our dogs knocked the bar, we were like, yeah, well, that was a fluke. That I don't really have any emotional attachment to that. That was a fluke. That was no big deal. Like, my dog doesn't usually do that. And yet the times where they missed their contact, let's even get specific, their dog walk contact, you say, yeah, that got really bad for a while. That was a thing. There was a time where that happened often. Now, the reason that happened could be different. There could have been 5 different reasons. You know, maybe you were out of position, you know, maybe, you know, the dog, there was a tunnel afterwards and, you know, like, yep, if there's dog walk tunnel, they're more likely to leap off. You know, maybe there were other reasons, but in your mind, what you thought was, oh my God, I have a dog walk problem because this has shown up multiple times. Now, multiple times for you, 3 might be the number that's good enough. Multiple times for somebody else, they might need 10 examples of this for it really to become a trend. But for whatever reason, something happened repeatedly that became a trend. I've known people doing obedience where they just kept having a bad experience. Like, just it was too serious, or the judge wasn't nice to them, or the stewards weren't very nice to them, and they just kept having a bad experience and they didn't want to go because it just wasn't fun. Well, and then they weren't fun, and then the dog wasn't having fun, and then nobody was having fun, and then the drive home sucked, and everybody was miserable, right? So it can be anything that develops enough of a pattern that for whatever reason in your mind, your thoughts, which in this case are like the actual times that it happened, become beliefs, right? You're like, no, this is a thing. You now start to take these instances of these things that happened a couple times, a few times, and you made them into these big trends, and you now are telling a story about it, that it has this weight and this depth and this like, oh my God quality to it, that you're like, oh no, this is going to happen. So now when you go to the event, whether you go to an obedience trial and you expect that everybody is going to be rude, or you go and walk into the standard ring and you expect that you're going to miss your contacts, then you start to handle differently. As a result, you show up differently. And this is where like a limiting belief starts to get its footing, right? Because you keep having these thoughts on repeat. You start to believe that this is a trend. You start to put a story around what it means and that it's going to be forever, or that you're never going to get past it, or you can't train past it, or maybe you should just give up or walk away, or whatever it is. It gets very emotional, right? That's what when it's like, oh, there's so much drama around it. We use that as a shortcut. Drama is really just emotion, right? A lot of emotion around it. So you start to develop a lot of emotion and maybe even fear around going into those venues or walking into those rings. And then when you make those decisions, of course, the handler that's showing up to walk into that ring is different, right? You can't tell me you're the same person you were before you had bad experiences at obedience, or before your dog started missing the contacts, right? No, we're different. We change. We start worrying. We start fretting. We start thinking that these beliefs are like true and gospel and that they cannot be changed. And that then affects our actions. And then, of course, when we take different actions, we get different results. And in this case, we get results that we don't want. Not a pretty snowball. So going back to our spreadsheet, we look at our spreadsheet. What we have to start doing is filling out the good side. You're doing a great job filling out the times that your dog missed the dog walk contact, or the times where the, stewards and the judges and everybody was rude in an obedience trial. But what about the times that everybody was lovely and nice, and about those great judges and those great people, or that club that had that really great trial, and the fact that you went back to a venue and they were really making an effort to make obedience fun again, which is a real thing, right? Obedience clubs and judges are really trying to work on, making obedience welcoming, and it is changing. It has made an impact, right? I'm happy to say that. And I know that my handlers, my own clients, are having really positive experiences back on that, right? So then you go to then those of us who are playing the agility game, you go back and you look at the dog walk and you're like, actually, my dog is getting it a lot of times. That and you start to record those times where you're having positive outcomes and positive experiences, and you start to weight those positive things more heavily, right? You don't just walk out of the ring and start talking about all the things that went wrong. You walk out of the ring and talk about all the things that went right. You leave the obedience venue and you're like, oh my God, we didn't cue, but that was the nicest, most pleasant club. And like the judge was so nice. And he was really helpful. And he helped me use my fix and go. And it was great, right? And you can walk out of the agility ring thinking like, oh, actually the last time we were here, my dog did get the contact here. And all I need to do is remember to be in the right position and it works out. Okay. So this is a little bit of an evidence or collecting exercise or scavenger hunt, whatever you prefer, or a database thing, or however your brain works. But we have to remember that we have to start collecting the good evidence, because otherwise we will always be afraid of the past repeating itself, because all we're hanging on to in the history books, like think about you're writing the history book of your life and you only ever write down the bad things. Can you imagine? Like, who wants to read that, right? And of course, that's not what our lives are. We would write all these happy moments and all these happy thoughts. And that's what we have to start thinking about when we are competing. We have to write down the good things that are happening. We have to practice and remember those just as much, if not more, than the bad things. Because something I read something once is like, it's like something like a 10-to-1 ratio, that we need 10 good experiences to outweigh every bad one. That's a lot. That's how much weight we put on those bad, negative experiences. So we really need to make an effort to record, in terms of feedback, in terms of your virtual spreadsheet, whatever that is for you, we have to record those good moments. And one of the ways we do that is when we are visualizing, upcoming trials, or we're thinking about the weekend ahead, and we're thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm going into standard. I am worried about my dog walk. What do I need to do? You need to think about the times your dog got it, right? You need to imagine the times your dog did that beautiful dog walk just the way you practiced it. Or maybe you're just envisioning running it like you run it at home, where of course dog walks and weed poles and A-frames are all magical when we're working at home, right? So the visualizing also has to change because worrying, by the way, is visualizing. Okay? If you didn't put those two together yet, or you haven't heard me say that recently, worrying is a form of visualizing. You're just visualizing stuff you don't want. So wherever our attention, our energy goes on repeat, like worrying is on repeat, that's what we're imagining, right? That's what we're imagining. That's what we're afraid of. But that's all where the energy is going. Those are all the pictures that we're painting in our brain, is this of worry or doom and gloom. Instead, we need to take that same imagination that we have, right? The one that's imagining all these doom and gloom scenarios, turn it around and imagine those moments where it goes right. Where it goes right in the ring, where it goes right, maybe walking around the ring. Those of you who have maybe a reactive dog, just going back to that example, don't just visualize your runs, visualize your day going lovely. Visualize your dog being an absolute mensch, just walking around like no big deal, or imagine it's not as crowded, or it's easier to get to the ring, or there's a great barrier, so that your dog can't see the next dog or something like that. Like whatever it is that you need, start imagining that. We're putting way too much effort on, we're using our imagination for evil is what we're doing, right? We're using our imagination to worry and fret instead of to imagine how it can go well and be supportive of our dogs and have a different experience. We have to decide to be open to new positive experiences, and we have to catch ourselves that when we start to go down that worry track and we hear ourselves repeating those same thoughts in our heads over and over and over again, like, oh my God, oh no, oh my God, oh no, that we interrupt it and we stop ourselves and we have a new thought. And one of the ways to do that is to go into your camera roll and remind yourself of a day that it went right, and really sit with that memory and really imagine it going right, or in other words, remembering it going right. And you probably, unless you've done it, you probably don't believe me, but there's so much power in doing it this way. And so I just wanted to kind of go back to that little meme, that little reel that I posted, and just really tease out this concept of, you're really afraid when you walk into the ring. Those nerves, a lot of it is you're nervous, you're worried that your past is going to happen again. And some of the homework that will dissolve this needs to happen a lot or often, like on your living room, or when you're driving to work and you're like worrying about the weekend or you're imagining it. Like, we need to do this mindset work often so that we create a different muscle memory other than fret, right? Fret's no fun. Fret's no fun. So we need to remember then when we start fretting, just interrupt it, just stop it. Think about something totally else, or best case, you think about a time where it went right. You go back to that trial when it all went right, or you go back to that trial when everybody was like lovely and friendly. You go back to that trial when your dog was an absolute love and it was really easy to navigate through the building, right? Or through the crowds or whatever it was, and everything went well. So use your imagination for good. Use your imagination for visualizing. That's really all it is imagining, daydreaming, whatever you want to call it. Just turn it toward the positive. Just interrupt it when it comes up and turn it right around. Okay? So I hope that helps. I love that it got that big of a reaction because it means that I touched a nerve with it. I think that that's real for so many of us. And let me know if this helps. And in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic week with your dogs. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.